Who did this to you?
Mafia boss accidentally sees her curvy secretary changing. His life changes forever. Rain hit the shattered windshield like static bleeding through a dead channel. Naomi Ellison pressed both hands flat against a wound soaking through a $3,000 suit jacket, blood sliding warm between her fingers, screaming a name she had never once let herself say with any real weight behind it.
Look at me!
Stay with me. Stay with me, Marcus. Look at me. 29 years old. The most efficient assistant in a 42-story tower. 6 weeks earlier, her biggest problem had been a coffee stain on a blouse. How did she end up here, holding a dying mafia boss, together with her bare hands, in the back of a bullet-riddled SUV? It started with a locked door that didn't stay locked. Subscribe right now and drop your city in the comments, because what happens behind that door is going to leave you speechless. Like, share, notifications on. This story is not what you think it is. The 42nd floor of the Calloway Tower smelled like fresh espresso and cold ambition. Naomi had learned to move through it like she belonged there, even on the mornings she wasn't entirely sure she did. Dark-skinned, curvy, carrying herself with the specific, quiet precision of a woman who had spent 4 years perfecting invisibility as a survival skill rather than a curse. She kept a spare blouse in the bottom drawer of her desk, a granola bar in her purse for the days she forgot to eat, a photograph of her younger brother taped inside a drawer where no one else would ever see it. She had wanted to be a lawyer once. Corporate law, contracts, the kind of career that came with a name on a door. She still remembered the acceptance letter from Northwestern, the way her mother had cried happy tears at the kitchen table reading it out loud. 6 months later, both her parents were gone. A highway accident on black ice, gone in the time it took a semi-truck to jackknife across 3 lanes. Naomi had traded her law school deposit for guardianship papers and a 14-year-old brother who needed someone steady. She never finished the degree. She finished raising Elias instead, and somewhere in the space where ambition used to live, she built something else entirely. Relentless competence. She became the kind of assistant who remembered a client's daughter's name, who caught scheduling conflicts 4 months out, who could diffuse a screaming vendor without ever once raising her own voice. That competence was the only reason Marcus Calloway had hired her. He was 36, ice-eyed, always in a suit tailored close enough to hide the weapon most people never knew he carried. Officially, he ran the Calloway Group. Glass offices, 4 cities, a name investors trusted implicitly. Unofficially, in rooms with no windows and fewer witnesses, men called him something else entirely. The name that still made older capos across the city lower their voices out of habit, built over 3 generations. To Marcus, Naomi was simply the most efficient hire of his career. He didn't know about Elias. He didn't know about Northwestern. He knew she brought him coffee at exactly 7:12 a.m., black, no sugar, and that she'd once rearranged an entire merger call around a stranger's funeral without him even asking. He relied on her the way a man relies on oxygen, completely, without ever once thinking to be grateful for it. That evening, an emergency board meeting had run 4 hours over. By the time the last investor left, the city outside the windows had smeared into gold and red taillights against sheeting rain, and Naomi's blouse had a fresh coffee stain blooming across the front, courtesy of a nervous junior analyst who'd bumped her elbow in a crowded hallway. She checked the clock, 8:47 p.m. Everyone gone. She was certain of it. She stepped into the private changing room off her office, the one perk of the job she'd never mentioned to anyone, to swap into the spare blouse folded neatly in her bag. She didn't know that 30 feet away, a black SUV was pulling back up to the building, headlights cutting twin lines through the rain. Marcus had forgotten a folder. Just one folder. Financial records he didn't trust to email, not even encrypted, not with what he already suspected was happening somewhere inside his own organization. He let himself back onto the executive floor with his own keycard, moving fast, distracted, running numbers in his head that didn't add up the way they should have. He opened what he thought was his study door. It wasn't. 2 seconds. That's all it was. 2 seconds of dark skin, bare shoulders, the curve of a body he had never once let himself notice in 11 months of working 12 feet from her. Then the door was shut, and Marcus Calloway, the man who had ordered things done that he never spoke of again, stood alone in a hallway with his heart doing something it hadn't done in over a decade. "I'm sorry." He said it through the door, low, immediate, before he even fully understood why his own voice had come out unsteady. He didn't wait for a response. He walked away fast, jaw locked, telling himself it meant nothing. It meant nothing. He believed that for almost 11 hours. Naomi didn't sleep that night. She replayed it over and over. The sound of the door, the shape of a silhouette freezing in the frame, the apology muffled through wood. She told herself it was an accident. She told herself he probably hadn't even seen anything. She also told herself that didn't matter, because now, every time she looked at him, she would know he had seen her, really seen her, past the blazer and the perfect posture and the practiced calm. She didn't know how to walk back into that office and pretend the ground beneath her hadn't shifted. By 6 in the morning, she had written the letter 3 times. By 8, it was on his desk before he arrived. Sealed, formal, professional to the last word, effective immediately. She didn't put a reason in writing. She didn't need to. They both already knew. Marcus read it standing up, still in his overcoat, rain still drying on his shoulders. He read it twice. Then he did something his own security detail had never once seen him do in 4 years. He crushed the letter in one fist and said, very quietly, to no one at all, no. What Marcus didn't know, what Naomi couldn't possibly have known, was that the coffee spill hadn't been an accident at all. Victor Delacroix had engineered it 3 floors down, with the same patient, surgical precision he brought to everything he touched. A quiet word to a nervous junior analyst about helping Miss Ellison carry files, a slight, deniable bump in a crowded hallway. Nothing that could ever be traced back to him. Victor was 52, silver at the temples. The specific danger of a man who had spent 20 years being the second most dangerous person in every room he entered, and had grown to despise the arithmetic of that position with a slow-burning, patient rage. He hadn't orchestrated the spill to embarrass Naomi. He'd orchestrated it because he needed her gone before she noticed what she had already, unknowingly, seen 3 weeks earlier in the ordinary course of her exceptionally thorough work. Naomi had copied a batch of quarterly transfer records onto a backup drive. Routine, standard practice, the kind of redundancy that had saved the company twice before when servers crashed. Buried in those files, disguised as shell company consulting fees, was $11 million of laundered cartel money Victor had been skimming and rerouting for the better part of a year. Money that belonged on paper to the Calloway Group and, in reality, to men who did not forgive accounting errors. Victor didn't know yet whether she'd noticed the discrepancy. He couldn't take the risk that she had. An efficient, sharp-eyed assistant, who never missed a detail, was no longer, to him, an asset. She was a liability with a badge that let her walk past every locked door in the building. Standing alone in his office that night, swirling a 20-year Macallan he didn't drink from, Victor allowed himself one small, private smile. Let her quit on her own. Let the boss believe it was heartbreak, embarrassment, a foolish accident with a door. Better a broken heart than a bullet, for now. He had no idea Marcus would refuse the resignation. He had absolutely no idea what that refusal was about to cost him. Victor found out about Marcus's refusal by the end of the day. A mole planted deep in HR, a nervous, overpaid man named Danforth, who reported everything for cash and cowardice in equal measure, delivered the news in a meatpacking district warehouse Victor used for meetings he didn't want recorded. She's staying. Danforth sweated despite the cold, seeping through concrete walls. Calloway tore up the letter himself, told his head of security to shred the personnel file copy too. It's like it never happened. Victor set his glass down very deliberately. Then we accelerate. Around him, 4 men waited in dim light, capos loyal to him, or loyal enough, purchased with cartel money that was starting to ask uncomfortable questions about missing shipments and missing funds. The girl has a brother. Victor's voice carried the specific patient cruelty of a man who had spent decades learning exactly which pressure points broke people fastest. Elias Ellison, 19, community college, part-time job at a hardware store on Damon. No security, no protection, completely, beautifully unaware. One capo, broad-shouldered and named Costa, frowned across the table. Boss doesn't sanction touching family. Not civilians. Never has. The boss isn't going to know until it's already done. Victor leaned forward, something colder moving behind his composed expression. We don't touch the girl, not yet. We take the brother, quietly, and we make sure Miss Ellison understands her silence and her resignation. Permanent this time, is the only thing keeping him breathing. His smile didn't reach his eyes. And if Calloway finds out you're behind it, he's going to be far too busy chasing a leak in his financial department to notice the fires coming from inside the house. By the time he does, the girl will be gone, the ledger will be gone, and there won't be a single thread left for him to pull. He checked his watch. We move in 72 hours. Naomi didn't understand at first why Marcus had started acting strange. He'd refused her resignation with 3 clipped words, "This isn't happening," and then, for 2 straight weeks, had somehow become both more distant and more attentive at once. He asked her, unprompted, whether her brother still lived on the same street. He requested, quietly, through his head of security rather than directly, an updated list of everyone who had building access to her floor. He started walking her to her car some nights, standing a careful, respectful distance away, saying almost nothing. Just present. "You're being strange," she finally told him one evening. The city smelling like wet concrete and distant thunder, both of them standing under the parking garage's fluorescent buzz.
"I'm being careful."
About what? He didn't answer that. He never really answered anything directly. She'd learned that about him over 11 months, but this silence carried different weight. Marcus. She used his first name. She almost never did. "If something's wrong, you need to tell me. I've kept your calendar for 11 months. I think I've earned that much." Something shifted in his jaw. For one moment, she thought he might actually tell her the truth. All of it. The company that wasn't really a company. The underboss he no longer trusted. The missing money he couldn't yet trace. Instead, he said one sentence that made no sense at all. "Call your brother tonight. Make sure he's home." She frowned. Why? That was when a black sedan rounded the corner of the garage too fast, tires shrieking against wet concrete, headlights swinging wide across the pillars. Marcus's hand found her shoulder and shoved her hard behind a concrete support pillar, half a second before the first gunshot cracked through the parking structure like a whip. The second shot took out the SUV's back window entirely, glass raining down over concrete like ice. Marcus had his weapon out before Naomi even fully processed. There was a weapon to draw, a compact pistol resting, she now understood, in a shoulder holster under his $3,000 overcoat for the entire 11 months she'd worked 12 feet from him. "Down, stay down." His voice had changed completely. Flat, clipped, a soldier's voice, not a boardroom one. Behind the pillar. "Do not move until I say." There wasn't time to process that. There wasn't time for anything but survival. 2 men came around the sedan, one advancing low along the driver's side, the other circling wide toward the pillar. Marcus tracked the first man's movement and fired twice, controlled, center mass, the kind of shooting that came from training, that had nothing to do with boardrooms and everything to do with a past he'd never once mentioned in a personnel file. The man went down hard against the bumper of a parked Mercedes. The second man got 2 shots off before Marcus returned fire, and one of those shots caught him high in the shoulder, spinning him half a step, his own gun clattering 3 feet across wet concrete. For a fraction of a second, the man had a clear line. Naomi didn't think. She grabbed the fire extinguisher mounted beside the pillar, standard building code, 20 pounds of pressurized dry chemical, and swung it into the back of the second gunman's knees with everything her frame could put behind it. He buckled. Marcus, even wounded, was already moving, driving his good shoulder into the man and slamming him into the pillar hard enough to crack tile. The gunman went still. Silence rushed back into the garage, broken only by rain hammering the ramp outside and the tick of a cooling engine. Naomi was already moving toward Marcus before adrenaline let her think clearly. Her hands found the wound at his shoulder, pressing down with the flat heel of her palm exactly the way a first aid course, taken years ago for Elias's scout troop, had taught her. Pressure. Constant pressure. Don't ease off. Her voice shook but stayed steady enough to be useful. We need to get you to a hospital, a real one, right now. No hospitals. Marcus gritted the words out. Gunshot wounds get reported. Get me to the car. You are not in charge of this decision. Naomi snapped, surprising them both. You're bleeding through a $2,000 jacket and giving me orders like I'm still just your secretary. That stopped about 90 seconds ago. Something that might have been admiration flickered across his pale face, even through the pain. Copy that, he managed. Car, now. She got him into the back of an undamaged Navigator, his driver arriving late and horrified, screeching up from the street level. And it was there, hands slick with his blood, city lights smearing past the window, that Naomi Ellison found herself screaming his name into the dark, exactly as this story began. The safe house they reached 20 minutes later smelled like gun oil, old coffee, and the particular sterile sharpness of a private doctor's field kit. A converted loft in the meatpacking district, reinforced doors, no address on any public record. Marcus was stitched, stabilized, stubbornly conscious, propped against pillows with color slowly returning to his face, while a doctor who clearly wasn't licensed for anything above the table finished cleaning up. Naomi sat across from him, still in blood-stained clothes, arms wrapped around herself, adrenaline finally draining out and leaving something colder and angrier in its place. You had a gun on you. Her voice came out flat. The whole time. Every day. For 11 months. Yes. You know how to use it like... She stopped, shook her head. Like it's not the first time, Army. Before this life. His voice came quiet. 2 tours, a long time ago. And the company, the real company. Her voice cracked slightly. Tell me the truth, Marcus. All of it. Right now. He held her gaze, and for the first time in 11 months, he didn't calculate the safest version of an answer. The Calloway Group is real. Marcus held her gaze without flinching. The investments are real. So is everything underneath it. Every family that's run this city for 3 generations runs a version of what you just witnessed tonight. I inherited mine. I didn't choose it any more than you chose losing your parents. Her breath caught. How do you know about my parents? I know everything about you, Naomi. His voice stayed quiet, steady despite the pain still radiating from his shoulder. Your grades at Lincoln Park High, your acceptance to Northwestern, your brother's guardianship paperwork. I had you vetted before I hired you, like I vet everyone. A pause. I just never let myself think about what any of it meant, until a door opened that shouldn't have. You lied to me for 11 months. I omitted. His correction came quiet, unflinching. There's a difference, and I know that's not good enough, and I'm not going to pretend it is. She stood, paced, stopped at the loft's tall window overlooking wet rooftops, stretching into darkness. Someone tried to kill us tonight. Her voice stayed low, controlled. Why? He hesitated 1 beat too long, and she turned back around sharp, eyes catching his in a way that demanded the truth before he even finished forming it. Alexander, there's a leak. He admitted it fully now. No more careful language. Financial records. Someone inside my organization has been laundering cartel money through our accounts for the better part of a year. I've been trying to find the source for 2 months. His jaw tightened. 3 weeks ago, you backed up quarterly transfer files onto a drive. Standard practice, routine. You copied the evidence without even knowing it. Someone panicked. Someone arranged the coffee, the door, all of it, hoping you'd quit before you noticed what you were sitting on. The room went very quiet. Victor. The name arrived in her mouth like something bitter. That's why you've been so strange. That's why you asked about Elias. Marcus's silence was answer enough. Naomi's hands curled into fists at her sides, fear and fury braiding together into something entirely new. Where is my brother right now? Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. And don't you dare give me a calculated answer. Elias Ellison had been taken 40 minutes earlier from the parking lot of the hardware store on Darman Avenue. A confirmation call came through to Victor's people just as Marcus's phone lit up on the safe house table. Naomi read it over his shoulder and did not scream, did not cry, did not do any of the things 11 months of watching her had taught him to expect. She went still, cold, focused. Here's what's going to happen. The voice that came out of her carried none of the softness of an assistant asking for approval. You are going to get every resource you have and find out exactly where Victor is holding my brother, and I am going to be in the room when you deal with him. Absolutely not. Marcus's voice hardened immediately. It's too dangerous. You don't get to decide that for me anymore. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I have spent 4 years being careful, being quiet, keeping my head down so no one would ever look too closely at the girl who gave up law school to raise her little brother alone. I'm done being careful, Marcus. I want Victor's people to see my face when this ends, and I want Elias to see that his sister didn't wait in a safe house crying while other people fixed it. For a long moment, Marcus simply looked at her. Really looked. The way he had through that fractured second in a doorway 6 weeks earlier. Except now what he saw wasn't skin or shape. It was steel. All right, he said finally. But you follow my instructions in the field. No hesitation. No improvising. I followed a fire extinguisher into a man's knees an hour ago. Her chin lifted. I think I've earned a say in the plan. Despite everything, the blood, the fear, a bullet still lodged an inch from causing real damage in his shoulder. The corner of Marcus's mouth moved. Almost a smile. Fair, he said. Let's go see Marcus Cole. They found the head of security at the loft's makeshift command table 20 minutes later, laying out a floor plan of an old meatpacking warehouse Victor had used before for quiet business. Trace on the last call pinging this address. Marcus Cole tapped the layout. If they're keeping the kid anywhere, it's here. Marcus studied the schematic, jaw tight. How many men? 6 confirmed. Could be more. Naomi leaned over the table, studying the same layout with the sharp, methodical attention she'd once given merger contracts. Something in the loading dock configuration caught her eye immediately. There, she pointed at a small marked door on the schematic's edge. That door. It's the same supplier we used for the downtown offices. I recognized the dock layout from an invoice I processed 2 years ago. That side door doesn't lock from the inside. Fire code violation. The last inspector flagged it, and Victor's team never fixed it because they didn't think anyone outside their own crew would ever need to know. Marcus Cole blinked at her. Marcus didn't look surprised at all. 4 years of paying attention to every detail no one else bothered to remember. His voice came quiet, edged with something dangerously close to pride. Victor should have taken that a lot more seriously before he decided she was expendable. Before the raid, Marcus made one call, not to Victor's people, to Victor himself, on a private line only 3 men in the entire organization had ever used. You've made a mistake. No greeting, no preamble. Victor's voice came back smooth, unbothered. I don't know what you're referring to. The girl's brother. Marcus's tone stayed dangerously flat. You should have left civilians out of this, Victor. That was always the one rule. A pause. Then something colder underneath Victor's composure. The girl was never supposed to notice anything. This is your mess, Marcus, not mine. You're the one who couldn't keep his hands off his own secretary. Marcus's voice went dead calm. I never touched her. Not yet. And there was something almost gleeful underneath it now. Guilt does strange things to careful men. You tore up a resignation letter over an accident, and now half your organization thinks the boss has gone soft over a woman who works for him. Do you have any idea how that looks? It's going to look a lot worse for you in about 2 hours. Marcus's voice dropped lower. When I walk into that warehouse and find out exactly how much of the cartel's 11 million you've actually spent. The line went dead on Victor's end. Marcus set the phone down slowly, and for the first time all night, Naomi saw something in his expression that wasn't calculation. It was rage, controlled to a razor's edge. Let's go get your brother. The warehouse on the edge of the meatpacking district still smelled faintly of old blood and older refrigeration units. A cavernous space of rusted hooks and standing water beneath buzzing sodium lights. Naomi went in through the unlocked fire door, exactly as she'd predicted, flanked by 2 of Marcus Cole's men, while Marcus led the main breach through the front with the rest of the crew, a coordinated pincer designed to leave Victor's people no clean line of retreat. Elias was zip-tied to a folding chair in a back office, pale and furious but unharmed. The sound of his sister's voice, saying his name, broke something loose in his chest that came out as a shaking, relieved laugh, even as she cut the ties with a box cutter from her purse. The same purse that had held granola bars and a hidden photograph for 4 years, now doing entirely different work. You came. His voice cracked slightly. Of course you came. Always. She meant it with her whole chest. Out on the main warehouse floor, gunfire had already erupted in short, disciplined bursts. Marcus's men were better trained, better prepared, moving with the certainty of people who knew exactly which fire door had been left unguarded. Victor Delacroix was found exactly where his own arrogance had kept him, in a raised office overlooking the warehouse floor, believing himself untouchable right up until the moment Marcus stepped through the door with a still bandaged shoulder and an expression carved from ice. Marcus. Victor didn't reach for a weapon. He knew better than that.
We can discuss this, family to family. You stopped being family the moment you put your hands on an innocent kid.
Naomi appeared in the doorway behind him a moment later, Elias safely with Marcus Cole's men below, and Victor's composure finally cracked at the sight of her, sharp-eyed, furious, unmistakably alive. Victor's voice carried something close to a laugh, all this over a secretary. No. Naomi stepped fully into the room, her voice steady in a way that made even the capos behind Marcus go quiet. All this because you thought a woman who color-codes your quarterly ledgers wouldn't notice $11 million of missing cartel money hiding in plain sight. I noticed, Victor. I noticed the discrepancy 3 weeks before you ever staged that coffee spill. I just didn't know what I was looking at yet. Every capo in the room went very still. She's telling the truth. Marcus's voice stayed quiet. Show them, Naomi. She held up a small flash drive, the same one she'd copied the files onto weeks earlier, retrieved from her desk before they'd left the safe house. Every transfer, every shell company, every dollar you skimmed, and every man you paid to look the other way. It's all here. Documented, dated, and about to be in the hands of people who take accounting errors a lot less personally than the cartel does. Victor's eyes moved across the capos flanking him, Costa among them, the same man who'd questioned the order to touch civilians in the first place, and found no loyalty left in a single face. Family doesn't touch children. Costa's voice came quiet. He stepped back out of Victor's corner permanently. It was Marcus who moved first, closing the distance in 3 steps. The confrontation that followed was brief, brutal, and entirely without mercy. The kind of ending men in Victor's line of work always knew, somewhere, was eventually coming for them. By the time it was over, the only sound left in the warehouse was rain against the high metal roof, and Naomi Ellison standing in a doorway unshaken, watching the man she worked for become, in that moment, something closer to the man he actually was underneath, 11 months of careful distance. They sat afterward on the loading dock steps outside, both of them soaked through, both of them alive in a way that felt almost unbearably loud after everything. You could have told me. Naomi's voice came quiet. About all of it. Before tonight. I know. You should have. I know that too. He turned to look at her, rain dripping from dark hair against his forehead, and for the first time since she'd met him, his face held nothing calculated at all. I kept you at a distance because I told myself it was for your protection. The truth is I was protecting myself. I didn't know what to do with wanting something I couldn't schedule or control. He paused. And now I know exactly what I want. I just don't know if I still deserve to ask for it after everything you've been through tonight because of my world. Naomi studied him for a long moment, the blood at his shoulder, the exhaustion under his eyes, the same silhouette that had once frozen in a doorway out of guilt rather than desire. Ask anyway. Her voice came soft. I've spent 4 years being careful with everyone else's life instead of my own. I'd like to stop, if you're offering me a reason to. He didn't answer with words. He kissed her instead, careful of his shoulder, careful of her exhaustion, but not careful at all with everything underneath it. And somewhere behind them, in a warehouse finally gone silent, the last 6 weeks of guilt, distance, and denial dissolved into something neither of them had scheduled, and neither of them wanted to control. 3 months later, the building on the corner of the loop still said Calloway Group, in brushed steel letters above the door. But the finance floor had a new compliance department with real teeth, a new chief operating officer named Naomi Ellison, and a framed photograph on her desk that was no longer hidden in a drawer. Elias had finished his associate's degree and started at a 4-year university that fall. Tuition paid in full. His sister finally free to stop sacrificing for him and simply be proud of him instead. Naomi still kept a spare blouse in her office. Old habits, she said when Marcus teased her about it over coffee one morning. His black, no sugar, made by his own 2 hands. Now not because she was required to make it, but because some mornings she still liked to. There was a private changing room off her new office too. Bigger. A proper lock on the door this time. Marcus had installed it himself, in case anyone ever gets the wrong idea about privacy in this building again, he said, perfectly straight-faced. Naomi laughed the kind of unguarded laugh she hadn't let herself have in 4 long years. The city outside her new windows still smelled like rain and ambition most evenings, but for the first time since a highway accident had rewritten her whole life at 22, Naomi Ellison wasn't just surviving inside someone else's story. She was finally, fully living her own. So tell me, was Naomi right to walk into that warehouse herself, or should she have let Marcus handle Victor alone and stayed safely out of the danger his world created? Let me know in the comments below. If you loved this story, like this video, subscribe for more Mafia romance dramas every week, and share this with someone who needs a happy ending after a long day.